All right, we are live and we are with the Vet's Best Friend Practice Profits webinar. We're going to be talking about employees. And before we get started, I just want to let you guys know, do a little housekeeping here that the call will be roughly a half an hour long. I do have everybody on mute so that way we don't get any interruptions on the recording part of it. And if you do have questions, just put them inside the question box and we'll address them at the end. Um, we do have this webinar every second Tuesday of the month at 4:30 p.m. So stay tuned for upcoming announcements for future webinars, and we'll be here every second Tuesday of the month. And with that, looks like we still have some extra people joining us. So let's go ahead and get started and get things moving here so we can get you guys out on time. The Vet's Best Friend is a group of advisors that works together, just so you guys know, to help veterinarians basically make their business more profitable. So we bring these webinars to you guys to try and help you educate you and your staff to make things more profitable for you. And hopefully in return, you'll look at some of our business offerings and use us in the future. And just so we are getting started here, it's stuck. There we go. My name is Jared Sparr, and I'm your host. And I am very excited to announce that I'll be interviewing Melissa Fennell. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Jared.
Hello, and Melissa is with evokepotential.com. Melissa, I'm going to go through your bio here and feel free to jump in if I get something wrong. Melissa is the president and owner of Evoke Potential. She's a certified leadership coach and a management consultant. She started her business over a year ago after a 16-year career conducting leadership development and team development within government and industry. She spent 10 years as a consultant at Booz Allen Hamilton, developing brilliant engineers in the U.S. Army and U.S. Air Force into effective leaders. Evoke Potential provides coaching and leadership development for companies from 10 to 100 employees. Services include individual and group coaching programs, workshops, and team facilitation. Melissa shows business leaders how to reduce their stress, multiply their productivity, profits, and personal time. And I know I am missing something when it comes to your degrees. So could you help me add that?
Yes, I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in behavioral psychology.
Ah, okay. So that would make a lot of sense. And Melissa, you're going to talk to us about basically how to find the right find the right employees, keep the right employees, and train the right employees. And my first question for you is, in your experience, what is the biggest challenge that business owners face when it comes to employees?
Well, first of all, Jared, thanks a lot for having me here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. And I would have to say that one of the biggest challenges that nearly all of my clients face is finding and keeping the right people. And it's critical to their business because that determines how many customers they can serve and how well they can serve those customers. And that ultimately affects their bottom line and their ability to grow their business. So when you have the right employees who are motivated, high performers, then they're your greatest asset, and you really want to hold on to them. But when you don't know how to keep them motivated, then they become disengaged or even possibly disgruntled, and they become low performers, and that's when they become your greatest liability. So Gallup actually conducted an employee engagement study in 2010, and they found that the lost productivity of actively disengaged employees cost the U.S. economy $370 billion annually.
Wow.
So put simply, your employees can make or break your business.
Yeah, it's amazing how true that is, and I found it out myself with my own employees. All right, so
Mm-hmm.
why is it such a challenge to find the right employees?
Well, I would have to say the biggest reason is because most business owners are really good at what they do. They're experts in the type of product or service that they provide. And many of them are also entrepreneurs who naturally excel in marketing and selling their product or service. But management skills just aren't generally part of their natural makeup. In fact, less than 10% of business owners have gone to business school to learn about management or even had any type of formal training in how to effectively lead employees.
Mm-hmm.
So knowing how to hire the right people and then what to do to hold on to them is really a mystery to many business owners. And I would say another factor is that when businesses start to grow, the owner usually promotes the best performing employee they have into that manager role. So
Mm-hmm.
again, this person is really good at their job. They're really outstanding in what they currently do. But a lot of times they're not given the proper tools, training, and resources to know how to effectively lead other people. So in general, what most people do is they learn how to lead other people by learning from those leaders that they had in the past. So in some cases, people are really fortunate and they had a good leader for a boss, and then they tend to model what they learned from them and they tend to emulate good leadership. But I would have to say the vast majority had mediocre or poor leaders for a boss. And again, they model what they saw and what was done to them. So when that happens, it kind of perpetuates that challenge and it leads to frustration and stress for employees. And what happens again, they either become disengaged or they leave the company. And so you've probably heard before that employees don't quit jobs, they quit bosses.
Hmm.
And this couldn't be more true. The biggest indicator of how long a person will stay with a company is the type of relationship that they have with their immediate supervisor. So put simply, if you don't like your boss, the person that has the most power and authority over your career advancement, you're not likely to stay with that company for very long.
I'm sure the
And when you
converse is
have,
true.
yes, yeah, if you have a great boss, then you're probably going to stick around for a while.
Even if
But if you, what was that?
I was gonna say, even if the company's not the best company, you'll probably stick around longer just because of that bosses.
Sure, because they have a good boss. Exactly. But when you do have high turnover, it's really costly to businesses. Money Watch provided an article that said the average cost to replace an employee that earns between $30,000 and $50,000 per year amounts to about 20% of their annual salary. And then when you have lower paying jobs that tend to be high turnover that earn less than 30,000, it still costs 16% of their annual salary to replace them.
Wow.
So you can see that that really starts to add up, especially if you have a revolving door of employees that are constantly coming and going. And it costs a lot more to keep replacing employees than it does to provide your leaders with the effective coaching and training that they need so that they can retain good employees and draw out the very best from them.
Yeah, I grew up in a family business, and my father was very interesting in the way he approached it. And was not traditional in that he said to me one time, most managers will reward their good employees by giving them more work. He goes, we don't want to do
Okay,
that. And
right.
what you said just kind of laid that out for me. It was very obvious at the time when he said it. And I really hadn't thought about it much till we were just talking. So it's kind of interesting how, we learn from the people we learn from.
Hmm. And who do you go to? You go to the people that you know you can count on, right? So then they
Yeah,
get more work.
exactly. Which is unfortunate because then you're kind of turning off the best employees.
Hmm.
All right, so question 3, is it better to which is better, finding or retaining the right people?
So both are really, really important, but you can easily outsource the recruiting aspect of your business and you can find somebody that can help you hire the right people, but you cannot outsource your leadership. So great leadership is essential to retaining your top performing employees. And if you can't hold on to those good employees, then your business is never going to make it to the next level of growth. I work with a business partner, Kathy Wojcik, and she really focuses on the hiring aspect and I focus more on the retention aspect. So working together, we make a great team and we have a lot to offer business owners who don't necessarily have a lot of experience or expertise in these areas. And it's really a lot of work to find the right people, to add them to your team. And then once you do find them, you don't want to lose them.
And I'm going to pick your brain a little bit about recruiting. I think a lot of business owners feel that the cost of recruiting is prohibitive, but I think with today's modern electronic society, it's more necessary to use a recruiter because a recruiter actually might have thousands of applications on file that they can do keyword searches and find your right ideal employee very quickly. And that doesn't mean they hire them. That means they just present them to you. For you to do that as a business owner on your own, I think that would just cost you a fortune. So just my thoughts on that.
Exactly. And not only that, but they have techniques and things that they can do to really weed out which is going to be a really top performer. Whereas if that's not something that you do on a day-to-day basis, you know, you might not have all the right questions to ask or the right screening procedure to really determine if that's going to be a good candidate in the long term.
Yeah, I think as business owners, whether you're a veterinarian or a chiropractor, you went to school and you know what you know very well. But the problem is you might not be an expert in HR. So that's why we're learning here
Exactly.
today. All right. I think I went ahead on my slides here. What does it take to retain key employees?
Well, Jared, I would have to say it's really all about relationships. People may not remember exactly what we said or what we did, but they always tend to remember how we made them feel. So,
Hmm.
Jared, I'm going to ask you a question.
Yeah.
I'd like you to think about the best leader that you've ever encountered, somebody that you would do just about anything for just because they asked you. It doesn't necessarily have to be a boss that you had in the past. It could be a teacher, it could be a coach, a minister, a relative, somebody that was a leader in your eyes.
Okay. I'm thinking of a
Okay, do you
mentor.
have this? You think of somebody? Okay, so what was it that you would say made that person such a great leader?
The way they motivated me, the honesty, like the integrity, they walk the walk, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way that I felt that they would go out for me. So there's no reason why I wouldn't, do whatever I needed to for them.
Okay, great. So again, like it comes down to the relationship, right? This was somebody that you trusted, that you felt cared about your success, and somebody who cared about you as a person.
Yeah,
Is that right? Okay,
exactly.
exactly. So I show people how to become this kind of leader. So it requires a shift from being a doer that's focused on just getting tasks done to being a leader that's really focused on developing those relationships with stakeholders. And that includes employees who are really your most important stakeholder. It's about empowering others to do what you can do. And that takes not only a lot of skill, but it takes a significant change in mindset because it's about being able to let go of control. And that's really hard for people in general. And I would say even more so for business owners who really have a great stake in the businesses that they've grown from the ground up in a lot of cases. But it's really critical if you plan to grow your business because really there's only so much that one person can do. And to take your business to the next level, you have to stop working as that doer in your business and start working as a strategist on your business and as a leader that empowers others to do that day-to-day work and really draws out the best from them. I would say another really important aspect of holding on to good employees is giving effective feedback and rewarding good performance. Like you said, don't reward the good performance by just adding on more work. You know, most leaders don't give feedback effectively. They don't give it enough, and they don't tend to give it at the right time. So, in my experience, I've seen a lot of managers holding the belief that no news is good news. So, they don't tend to give feedback unless employees are doing something wrong. And people in general just don't work that way. They want to know what they're doing well, and they want to know what they can do better. And when they hear no news, they start to wonder if their boss even notices their contribution or that they're even there at all.
Hmm.
So managers really need to be specific about what employees are doing well so that they'll continue doing it. And managers need to reward good performance, but they need to know how their employees want to receive that recognition. So some employees don't like public recognition and they would just prefer a simple thank you note. But the key is to ask them. You'll never know unless you ask. And then on the flip side, employees need to know what they can do better. And this is often done really poorly in my experience, either because managers are uncomfortable giving feedback or because they were never taught how to do it effectively. So it shouldn't be a judgment about, this is what I think you aren't good at. It should really be specific about the behavior or the task. Something like, well, that deliverable was turned in late to the customer. So it's being very specific. It should also include the impact of that behavior, such as, now I had to call the customer, I had to apologize and offer a refund. And then you also want to tell them what behavior you want to see in the future. So something like, next time I really would like you to give me a status 2 days before the deliverable is due to the customer. When you have low performance and unacceptable behavior, it really needs to be dealt with as soon as possible before it becomes a pattern. Because if that's allowed to continue, it just totally destroys morale within the team. And this doesn't have to be done in a mean way, and it shouldn't be done when you're angry. But
Hmm.
employees need to know, what they're doing specifically that's causing a problem, what the impact is, and then what's going to happen if it continues.
And I'm just taking
So,
notes actually because I find that very good.
but those
Perfect.
are kind of all the things to hold on to employees. They need information and feedback. They want to know what's going well, what they can do better,
And
and
how to
not just
fix it, what the results are,
exactly.
and being specific. I think that's, instead of you did a bad job, let's be specific on exactly what went wrong. And now we
Mhm.
know how to correct it. All right, so how can you train and become an effective leader?
So what I do is I use a combination of both coaching and training. So I give them tools. I teach them how to effectively set expectations. We go through how do you give that effective feedback. We might even do some role playing, how to delegate appropriately. Those are the main types of things. I also coach them in how to strengthen areas that are critical to effective leadership, such as controlling needs and impulses, the things like the need to be right, the need to be in control. Those are big ones. I would say, especially for entrepreneurs, because this is their baby, right? They built this, and it's hard to let go of that control. Understanding how their emotional states affect their employees, that's another big one. And then asking more questions as opposed to telling. We have a tendency to talk way more than what we listen.
Hmm.
And if we flip that around and listen more to employees, I think we'll find some really good information in doing that. I also show them how to build better working relationships and how they can tap into the talents and interests of their employees so that they're more fully engaged at work and they make a greater contribution on a daily basis. And I actually focus quite a bit on stress management, not only for the business leader, but also for the employees. Because when leaders are under stress, that kind of trickles down and it starts to negatively affect employees. And then now the boss's stress becomes the employee's stress.
Hmm.
So when employees are under stress, then obviously they're not going to perform at their best and they don't give customers the best possible service. So that's going to end up in errors. It's going to end up in maybe being rude or abrupt to customers, and that eventually leads to lost business. So stress is really costly to businesses, and it can even cause them to go out of business if it's not handled effectively. According to the American Psychological Association, stress costs U.S. businesses $300 billion annually in missed work, stress-related healthcare costs, and lost productivity.
Wow.
So what I do is I help leaders not only recognize and manage their own stress, but I help them identify what's causing stress for their employees. And then we work to put some practices into place so that they can resolve those issues. And then I give them tools to better deal with the stress and become more resilient so that they can bounce back from a stressful situation more quickly.
Okay.
So, all of this, it might sound like a lot of touchy feely stuff that business owners would rather not deal with, but these are really the very things that truly make or break a business. So most really successful businesses are the ones that not only get this stuff, but they exploit this knowledge and they use it to create an environment where employees do more, they contribute more, they're excited to come to work every day. And
Hmm.
then obviously all that translates into more innovation, better solutions, better customer service, and then ultimately more business growth and success.
Definitely. And it's funny because as you're speaking, I'm thinking of different parts of my, my history and how it's come into play, exactly how you kind of explained it. So you're dead on. All right, we got a little bit of time. So what is any other advice that you can give us?
Um, I would say being real is another big one. I think a lot of times the the owner or the big boss thinks they have to have all the answers and they have to not show when they're afraid of something or they kind of put on a front because they want to look like they have it all together. And sometimes if you can just let those walls down and be real and say, hey, I don't have the answer. I don't know. I want to hear your thoughts or this is kind of what's going on. I think a lot of times if you can be more real, then it tends to build a better bond. And then people tend to want to help more. because they want to see you succeed.
Gotcha. And I'll open this up for questions. If you guys do have a question, just put it inside the question in the chat box and we'll address it. I will keep you on mute. I'll just read the question. So that way we kind of get the clean recording. We have one question here that says, Melissa, what do I do with a real problem employee? I've tried everything I can. What's my options?
If you've tried everything, you've tried the coaching, and it depends on what the problem employee, what do you mean by problem employee? If it's somebody that isn't performing, is it a skill or a will situation? If it's a skill situation, have you tried to give them all the training, the tools, and the resources to help them learn it? If it's a will, that's more of an attitude type thing. And again, have you tried giving them the feedback? Have you tried to find out what motivates them? Have you got, deep to the root of that? And if you've tried all those things and it's just a matter of they're not going to do what you want them to do, then it's probably time to tell them this is probably not the best place for you to work.
This just might not be a good fit. And I don't
Yeah.
see any
And
other.
sometimes doing that is actually doing people a favor.
Something, it's like when you be mean to your girlfriend so she breaks up to you.
Because maybe it really isn't a fit, and maybe they
Yeah,
would be happier and more productive in a different role, in a
yeah.
different company.
And a lot of times they're not productive when they're not happy, so the two go hand in hand.
Right.
Um, yeah, I don't see any other questions coming in right now, but just one that popped into my head while we're talking, and you talked about a little bit before was what's your thoughts on like employee manuals and job descriptions and policies? How does that come into play with managing and retaining employees?
I think those are all really good things to have. I don't really specialize in putting those types of documents in place. My partner, Kathy, who has many, many years of HR experience, focuses more on that. But those are all important. People need to know what their job description is. They need to know what they're responsible for. They need to know what their team members are responsible for. They need to know what the policies are. How are things done here and what happens when you don't follow the rules? What are the consequences? So again, I think the more information you can give people about what the expectation is, the easier it's going to be. It makes it a lot easier to enforce something if you've communicated what that is.
And I think that's the key right there, setting the expectations. And from my own experience with different business owners, I think they might have a really good professionally written, policy and procedure manual, but they don't use it. So it's kind of
Right.
pointless to have it. So it's not only using it or not only having it, but I think, referring to it and making it more of a living document that you use. So,
Absolutely.
all right. And I don't see any other questions coming in. So if you have questions, go to the next screen here. You can either email me at info@restaurantbusinessadvisors.com or Melissa at cmelissa.fennell@evokepotential.com, and she can get you the answers to any questions you have. Before we do go, I know you had a couple of really neat offers that I thought would be a good fit for our clients as well. One was a free consultation, almost like a discovery session, kind of on what you want to achieve and what's holding you back. So almost like a gap analysis, I guess you could call it. Tell me more about that.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of call this my management makeover complimentary session. So it's really for leaders who maybe are stressed by low morale in their workplace or high turnover or poor performance. So we really kind of uncover, what would make you thrilled to go to work every day? What would you ultimately like to see happen in your business? What are those management challenges that are holding you back? And then we pinpoint what the next steps are so that you can be your very best at work and so that you can motivate employees to be their very best. And then you leave that session inspired to make some pretty powerful changes. And again, that's a complimentary session.
That's awesome. And that's available just by emailing you, and you can set that up for them.
Absolutely.
And then you also have what I thought was really interesting too was like a stress reduction, like a keynote presentation that you do, which also provides feedback for the business owners. How does that work?
Yes, so it's an hour-long presentation, and so we go through what is stress, what are the costs of stress, what are the symptoms of stress, and then what can you do to reduce your stress. And then another thing that we do is we have them take a survey where they identify what are the things both at work and at home that are contributing to your stress. And if that's all confidential, we don't share who said what. I just kind of tally and keep that data. But as far as what's causing work stress, I do look at everybody's response and I count them up, and then I will provide to leadership, here are the top 3 to 5 biggest stresses in your workplace. And a lot of times they're not going to get that information otherwise. So it's a nice way for them to find out what's going on. And sometimes it's things that they can do something about. It might even be something that I can help them do something about. Other times it's things that are out of their control. But if it's something as simple as employees are stressed because you want them to work at 7 o'clock in the morning and their daycare doesn't open until 7:30, that's a real easy fix for them. So it's kind of
Definitely.
nice for them to get that information.
And sometimes you don't get that direct information, so you never know what the problem is.
Exactly, because sometimes employees are afraid to tell you.
Interesting. And I think that it's very revealing, and sometimes having a third party do the work, they're a little bit more open to share. So I think that is definitely worthwhile. So, and again, it's a free 1 hour session that you do, and it's ties into the coaching and kind of rolls back into your coaching, so you can help them fix whatever problems you discover. So that's really good. All right, so we
Great.
covered up what are the biggest struggles that business owners have. Whether it's better to find or retain good employees, how you train leaders, and what it takes to retain employees. And we had a few other things that we covered in the meantime. If you guys do have questions for Melissa, please do not hesitate to email her, cmelissa.fennell@evokepotential.com, and she will get back with you right away. And again, you can also get in touch with us. This webinar will be available on our website tomorrow, and that's at thevetsbestfriend.com. So if you missed it or had to leave early or came in late or want to share it with a colleague, you can get it there. And from there, we really appreciate all your time today. And Melissa, I thank you so much for joining us today as well.
Thank you, Jared. I just want to ask you that C, Melissa, was that something that you added, or is
Yeah,
that a typo? Okay.
is that wrong? Have
It's
I been
it's
saying it wrong?
just Melissa. It's just
Okay, thank
Melissa
you very much for
Fennell.
clearing that up because it is a typo then. I've been giving everybody the wrong email address. So cross
Yeah, I
that
just want to
off.
double check on that.
It's
Yeah.
just Melissa Fennell at evokepotential.com.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for pointing that out because otherwise you'd be wondering why people weren't contacting you. All right. So again, if you guys have any questions, it's melissa.fennell@evokepotential.com. I got that wrong on the screen. I apologize. And again, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everybody so much for your time.
Thank you, Jared.
All right. Bye, guys.